All right, well, today we're going to talk about some helpful tips to do business in Colombia and to communicate effectively based on their culture. So, a few things about Colombia. They are very, very relational. They are very based on family. They assume that that is your very top priority no matter who you are. And so, because of that, a lot of times in business meetings or business deals, they'll spend, extra time just getting to know somebody. The first couple of meetings, you're really not going to seal a business deal. You're mostly getting to know people. You're building that relationship and that trust. And so, us Americans, we like to be a little rushed. We want a decision now. We want to be able to get into a meeting and, make a final call. And so something that we want to be careful of as we are in that culture is, certain nonverbal gestures we might want to avoid is, glancing at a watch or looking kind of disengaged or bored, watching our attention as we engage in those moments and realizing that, prolonged just getting to know one another or having more of that personal conversation isn't hindering your business. It's actually helping it because the Colombians that you're doing business with, they want to know that they can trust you. They want to know they can trust you as a person. They want to know that they can rely on you. And more than just looking at, a record of a business, they want to know that you as a person are reliable. Another thing, because of that relational aspect, a lot of times Colombians may not directly answer your question with a no because they want to value you and how you feel above not wanting to do something. And so because of that, we want to be careful not to be too pushy. We want to be careful not to be too aggressive in our communication and in the way that we express things. So, sometimes, that can be in the way that we say our words or in the way we speak, our tone, but that can also be in our body language. We don't want to be invasive. We don't want to come off very powerful in a moment and making them feel like they need to kind of surrender or submit to us in that moment. We want to, again, focus on that relationship and create an even playing field, create something where they feel where they can trust us and that we're not domineering, we're not trying to command something, that we're not trying to, shove something down their throats, but that we're proving ourselves and that we're showing that relationship is worth something. Again, with relational aspect, handshakes are very common. So when you walk into a meeting and when you leave, a handshake is expected. Some cultures are more expressive or more have more of that interaction. A handshake is pretty similar to America, but that is very expected. And anything beyond that, though, is it's reserved for closer friends. So as you build more relationship and as you develop that relational trust that Colombians are looking for, you may move to a hug in your business meetings or things like that. But initially, you'll start with a handshake, and so you want to be careful to make sure that you're engaging in that physical contact, but that you're not pushing it and trying to be more physically engaged than that. Also, another interesting thing is if you're a woman and you're meeting with a woman, she may choose to grasp your forearm instead of a handshake. So it's just a little bit more contact, but just to be aware of that and to realize that, if it's a woman-to-woman contact, that is culturally accepted and it's something that is used commonly to greet one another. So you do want to engage in some level of physical contact when you have your business meetings with Colombians. Another thing is with, how they communicate their body language while they're communicating. Colombians are very expressive. They like to use their hands. They like to smile a lot. And, sometimes with Americans, we like to be just direct because we're direct. We can have more of a straight face. We can, be more controlled in our movements. And so when you engage in conversation as you meet in these moments, you probably want to make sure that you are warm and that you are inviting. So whether that is something as simple as a smile, or if you do, I use my hands a lot, but if you don't, maybe try and use a gesture every now and again to just bring that warmth to the conversation. But a few gestures to be aware of that are considered offensive in Colombia. Here's just a couple, right? Pointing. you do not want to point. So even if you're, saying, this is a great bargain, don't you want it? That's offensive. So you want to avoid that. Another thing, maybe you're selling lumber. I don't know. Maybe you're selling some wood and you want to show them that the pieces of lumber are about, yay wide. Using both fingers to point is actually offensive. So you don't want to do this even if you're trying to gesture or something. It's considered rude. And so you want to avoid that. Another thing, you may not use this in business meetings, but maybe if you are a very expressive person, you may do this. The AOK symbol is also offensive. And actually, if you hold it up to your nose, which, I guess that would be more of an intentional act, but if it's held up to your nose, then it's used to basically refer to someone who is a homosexual. So you wouldn't want to be in a business meeting and say, man, that contract sounds A-okay to me, and offend your business partner. So you just want to be careful about, particular gestures, and even though they are expressive, being careful to make sure you don't use gestures that are offensive in their culture. Another thing is that they're in their culture, they are focused on honor, and they have a very formal and hierarchical system in business. So, a lot of times they work with family because of that relational aspect. And a lot of times, maybe the father or the grandfather is the head of the company, or the executive, or whatever term you want to use. And as you realize that they are very honoring in that sense, and they are very structured, a lower level employee is not going to make major decisions. They might be pulled in for perspective or to give their insight, but they're not going to be the person to make a call. And so when you set up your meetings, you want to make sure that you set up meetings with the boss. You want to make sure you're meeting with the right people. And another thing is that you want to be intentional to use titles. So whether that's, doctor, or that's Mr. or Mrs., you want to make sure that you're honoring in that. And, even going back to something as simple as the handshake, you would want to be intentional even with your body language or your physical interactions to show that you are honoring. Another thing is, even as you build that relational trust, it might be easy to get a little more relaxed and to not feel that, intense pressure in certain meetings. But because they are built on more of that formal structure and honor and all that, you definitely do not want to get comfortable enough that you put your feet up on a table, or that you kind of just lounge back in your chair and put your limbs all over their furniture. That is offensive. And so you want to make sure that even as you become more relaxed and more comfortable with the people you're doing business with, that you don't allow that to have you violate their sense of honor. And to still be intentional to do that. Another thing is they have a very relaxed view on time. I think, some of us may be aware of this in other, South American cultures, or even some African cultures tend to be a little bit more lenient on time. And that is true in Colombia. However, as a foreigner, they do often expect you to be on time. So that's not a motivating piece or an excuse for you to show up to a meeting late. But it does mean that if, your Colombian business partner shows up late, that you need to be careful not to show offense, maybe not roll your eyes or let out an exasperated sigh, realize that is a part of their culture, and that is a part of how they typically operate. And so you need to be careful not to show that you are offended at that, or that you feel, violated somehow. Another thing is that typically, because of this relaxed timetable, meetings will run late. So if you are scheduling several meetings while you're in Colombia doing business, you want to make sure that you allow a few extra hours of time in between your meetings, just in case it goes late. Again, a lot of it is based on relational time and just building that trust. And so you may accomplish what you're looking to accomplish, but there's extra time being spent just interacting and getting to know one another more, or building that trust factor. And so you want to be careful to make sure that you allow time for that, and that you're not scheduling things back to back. And again, as I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure, again, that you're not, looking at your watch or making frustrated frustrated gestures to show that you think that the meeting should be over, or that frustration over someone showing up late. Another thing is just to be aware of is that lunch meetings are very, very common in Colombia. So it would be very, very common for you to arrange a lunch meeting with your business partner. However, do keep in mind that if you are the person who invited someone else to lunch, you are expected to pay. So while in America, a lot of times we would, split it, or, it might be based on who is, trying to get the business from another person. Even if, you are there in Colombia because a company there wants to sweet talk you into working with them. If you're the person who suggests the lunch meeting, then you are expected to pay the bill. And so in those moments, to avoid looking, again, frustrated or looking confused, but to realize that that is a part of the culture. And even with the lunch meetings, to avoid any body language that would show that, you think that this time is supposed to be break time, but to realize that this is valuable time that they realize can be utilized to accomplish their business goals. And so those are some of the main things you want to be aware of as you do business in Colombia. They are an amazing people, very relational, like I said, very family-oriented, very welcoming, very expressive and warm. And they are a great people to do business with. And so I hope that you have great success if you ever engage in conversations with them.